Hey everybody. Okay, so we just saw Wonder Woman. Yeah, I know. I was fussing forever to try and get the camera kind of centered to where we were both on it, and this was the best I could do. So, anyway. Alright, so let me get that thing off. It's a bit rainy today. It's a Sunday. Alright, so Wonder Woman. I'm here with my buddy Aid, my compadre, for all the best DC movies, apparently. Seems like whenever I see a really good DC movie, you're there. Yay. Woo! Okay, so, first off, let's talk about the Justice League trailer that preceded the film. Was there anything to say about that?
I'm excited to see Aquaman, because I don't know too much about him, so...
I'm with you on that. And I like what the direction they're taking him. You know, he's not quite the clean-cut guy he was in the 50s and stuff.
I like not clean-cut. I'm sorry, clean-cut, it just doesn't do anything for me, ever.
Fair enough. I mean, they even gave Batman some scruff and everything, so it works just a little bit better, so I'm feeling you on that. I was really pleased to see Cyborg. And I've been watching The Flash the past... Because, for those who don't know, I didn't watch The Flash when it was on TV. So I watched it on DVD and just kind of have been catching up the last week with the first couple seasons by binge watching. Anyway, so I don't think that was the same actor as on the TV show. I know you haven't seen the TV show, so this is just me guessing. But it didn't look like the same guy to me. And let's see, what else? Well, of course, because we are such Wonder Woman fans, we were really excited more about Wonder Woman and the Justice League in a movie. As far as we're kind of concerned, that's the movie. It's Wonder Woman and the Justice League. Get used to it. Just like it was Wonder Woman and also Batman vs. Superman.
Wonder Woman and the Martha Party.
The Martha Party, I like that. Martha! Martha! They're letting them kill Martha! No. Actually, we were talking the other day, and I kind of came up with a different way of looking at Batman vs. Superman than what we talked about in the other video, which was that if you focus more on the female characters as the protagonists of the story, then it's a better movie. But if you only focus on the male protagonists, it's crap. Or it's just not as good, because it's not quite what you were expecting. The Senator does not have to be female, but they made her female. And by kind of just... And by kind of just making her female, they automatically demoted her somehow in the audience's eyes. And that's a problem. But then you've got Wonder Woman, easily a better character. She's kicking Doomsday's butt in that one. But yeah, anyway. So let's actually talk about the movie that we saw. Anyway, so the actual film that we came to see, of course, was Wonder Woman, starring Gal Gadot. Shifted a little bit, and now we're a bit more centered. Alright, so so the film has a really good structure in terms of like the Act 1 on Themyscira.
Oh, that was, yeah.
What do you think about the Act 1 in terms of that structure?
I liked the idea that they did it. I loved all the fighting and training sequences with the Amazons, and them setting her up as a young character who wants to be like these women she sees fighting and everything, and even though her mother doesn't want her to go in that direction, it just shows how determined she is, and how that really helped her training and becoming what she eventually, you know, her final form.
Right, it was still her in kind of the nascent form. before she stepped into her own. You had a lot of the introduction of the plot devices like the God Killer and, Ares causing people to go to war and everything. It was fascinating. They did a really good job with casting. I loved the women that they chose because they chose a really diverse array of women. I mean, they were all pretty athletic.
Oh, yeah.
There were no fat women on Amazon Island for some reason. Like, you cannot tell me that there's not at least one fat woman. I mean, if we're gonna value all bodies, let's have a woman who's not.
Well, you gotta have women on the island who are responsible for things that are other than just fighting. I mean, somebody's gotta do the cooking and, making clothing and, other basic life necessity type things.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, they were all in really tip-top shape and everything, but I was, a little bit surprised at that. And apparently there was not one woman there who had, any kind of disability. But, I mean, that's neither here nor there. But a more diverse body type array would have been nicer. As it was, they had some women who were a little bit beefier. A little bit more like the Amazons on Futurama. And that's okay. What about the Steve Trevor character? Because he's kind of introduced in that part of the story, too.
Yeah. I mean, he was okay as a person. Personally, I would have preferred less of a focus on him. And, I thought the romantic bit was completely unnecessary. It didn't really add too much to the plot. It was just kind of thrown in there, and the movie would have been fine without it. And I thought that, his death motivating her to continue, that wasn't really necessary either. And then she's finally like, oh, I fight for love or whatever. And I'm like, oh my god, can we not do this?
You're skipping ahead. Let's not get there.
Sorry.
But yeah, spoiler alert, everyone. Steve Trevor dies.
Woo!
I kind of spoiled the movie for people, Abe.
Well, you can edit that out.
I'll try to do something. I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, because we have to get to the part that you and I both loved, which is when she's sailing off in the boat, and we were immediately having Moana flashbacks.
Oh yeah, I'm like, where's Maui? Is Maui gonna pop out of the?
Well, Maui was Ares.
No, Maui was that horned creature. I don't know what it was on the island before she jumped across to the tower.
Oh.
He was watching out for her.
That was like an ox.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I knew it was some member of that family, but...
Yeah, I think it was an ox or something like that.
Yeah, Maui was watching over that, and then, helped them wayfind along the way. And that's how they got to London so fast.
That makes sense because, they fall asleep on the boat, and then the next time we see them, they're in London, and they get from the Mediterranean to London in one night. And he says, well, we got a little help along the way. And they show a tugboat. I'm like...
What can I say except you're welcome?
It must have been Maui. Anyway, so that was really amazing. I'm like, maybe Maui was piloting the tugboat. Anyway, I don't know. Yeah, so that was pretty crazy. Then they introduced the secretary, Etta Candy. That is a bad pun.
Yeah.
I think Etta Candy might have been from the original Wonder Woman comics. Actually, we should mention another contextual element here. The film takes place in World War I, which is odd because Wonder Woman was created during World War II. So they're kind of taking her out of where she normally was. But I think they were trying to get it away from being too much like Captain America.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
Because he was a World War II guy, right?
And the whole, Nazi thing is completely overdone.
Oh, it really is. That being said, they tried to avoid some cliches, and they also went for some cliches, like the relationship that they have. That was kind of just unnecessary. They didn't need it, but it worked, sort of. You could tell that he was definitely making love with an Amazon, because from scenes there on out, if it were any other movie, as soon as they make love, suddenly she's worshiping him and listening to every word he says, and it's like, no, I'm Wonder Woman, I'm gonna go do whatever the heck I want, deal with it. So I thought that was pretty cool.
And she already knew that men are unnecessary for pleasure because she read those books.
They mentioned that in the little scene where they're falling asleep on the boat, she read all 12 volumes by Cleo on human pleasure and everything, and yeah, that's a really funny scene on the boat. I liked it.
Yeah, that was great. She's like, you don't sleep with them, and he's like, well, I do, but he's trying to explain this idea of chastity before marriage to her, and she's just kind of like, why?
It's a good point.
And then he's explaining the concept of marriage, and she's just like, why do people do that?
Well, she also says, so they love each other forever, and he's like, well, no, not always. It's very rare, actually. And then she's like, well, then why bother? Mm-hmm. And it kind of does put marriage kind of in its place.
Yeah.
It's it's okay if you want to go do that. And this is actually the same weekend that we attended your sister's wedding, so we're really in that, Anyway, so it's just important to note that as we're making light of that.
Yeah, I just went to my sister's wedding yesterday, and I feel really bad for my new brother-in-law, but I told him to run, but
I'll edit that out, don't worry. Okay. Anyway, so I'm not gonna edit it out. Anyway, so the real action doesn't start until you actually get to the continent, but while they're in Britain, they introduced some interesting stuff that I liked. They show how much the government running the war is really just this fraternity of dude bros. Mm-hmm. And they're all like, why is there a woman in here? I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
They're all got walrus mustaches, and they go, why is there a woman in here? This is terribly inconsiderate. Anyway, so it's just why given, yes, they would probably have that reaction. We don't have women in government. That was the Minister of Waddles doing that. Anyway, but yeah, then he has to assemble his team. Steve Trevor, who is bringing her along, and very quickly he's they're caught in the alley by some German agents. Mm-hmm. And they decide, and so she saves his butt.
Oh yeah.
In every possible way.
As she does.
And then the one German agent that they're going to hold for questioning is trying to get away, and who holds him off from getting down out of the alley? Etta Candy.
I thought she was kind of awesome too.
At first they really underplay her as the comic relief and everything, but and I think in the comic books Etta Candy was a comic relief character, hence the name. But yeah, they absolutely went ahead and they went for it, and they actually had her be a regular person, not just this caricature.
Oh yeah, I liked her character.
And so anyway, so she's going to be running things from the home office, while he's off on his mission. Mm-hmm. But he has to assemble his team. So the team is pretty racially diverse. It's interesting. This motley crew of characters that he drums up. It's not quite the crew that you had in Captain America. the first Avenger, because there you had like a French guy and an American guy who was like, I guess, Irish American, and you had you had like a few other characters. I know you had an African American guy, and you had a guy from California who was Asian American.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of interesting that they had that, but in this one they have a guy who's from the Middle East, a Native American, and a Scotsman in a kilt. Kilt.
He doesn't wear it properly, though.
Well, he doesn't wear regimental fashion.
Which is the proper way.
Aid likes it when people who wear kilts don't wear underwear. So, I mean, you can wear underwear with a kilt, especially if you know that you're going into an area where bugs could fly up and bite delicate parts. Yeah, bugs ruin everything. Anyway, so, but they make light of the kilt in a wonderful scene. They're walking through this cold forest, and they encounter their Native American friend that they're meeting up with. And the Scottish character, Charlie, is happy to see the fire. He warms his hands, and then he flaps his kilt at the audience.
That was pretty great.
Oh, it was wonderful, although I could have done without seeing his skivvies.
I thought that made it even funnier.
It did make it funnier.
Because they were just like, plain tidy whities.
They were.
And for some reason I find tidy whities hilarious. They're like the funniest kind of underpants.
Easily. So, one part I love is that they talk about how in the trenches in Belgium, the area between the two fronts with the trenches is called no man's land, and Steve Trevor's like, no man can cross that. And I immediately turned to you and I said, she is no man.
Yeah.
I was like, yes. And what does she do? She goes out into the middle of no man's land, and what is she doing? She
crosses it, and they start shooting at her, and she's like, "Pachoo, pachoo, pachoo," takes the shield.
Yeah, she gets pinned down by like 3 machine guns, and that's when the guys do help her. Because she doesn't need their help up until that point. But that point, it's like, okay, understandable.
She's the distraction. They're all focused on taking her down, and then the guys come over.
Mm-hmm. Which is playing a bit into the Captain America thing, but it works, whatever. But then they're doing all of this so that they can get to the village. There's this village that's been sieged by the Germans, and just so we're clear, these aren't Nazi Germans. For those who don't know history, these are Prussian Germans. Prussian Germans are Imperial Germans, so yeah, they're all kinds of weird. But compared to, I mean, if you think that Nazi Germans are weird, Prussian Germans just are a totally different flavor of weirdness. Anyway, so they're getting to this town to liberate it, and they've got a tank, they've got machine guns, and then they manage to take all of them out, and then they find that there's a sniper. And the one sniper that they've got, Charlie, he can't shoot because he's kind of shell-shocked. And he can't quite deal with the idea of going back into battle. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a beautiful little element. They didn't need to put that in. But it worked. And it gave it such a good flavor.
Mm-hmm. And it wasn't a sudden thing either. You knew that he was haunted by ghosts.
They did put that in, yeah. I loved it. Because he was sleeping, and he was like, no, I don't want to go. Mm-hmm. And he freaked out when he woke back up. I think he was having a night terror, and then he just kind of stormed off a little bit. And
yeah.
Steve was like, don't worry, he doesn't mean it. He's just seen things. And the Native American says, he's seen ghosts. And it's like...
Yeah.
Yeah, you really felt for him.
So they definitely show that it's not like him being incompetent. It's like severe PTSD going on.
Absolutely. And one thing that I loved was the fact that they had Charlie played by the character who played Spud in Trainspotting.
I haven't seen that.
Well, don't worry if you haven't seen it. The point is, the whole point of Spud is he's a goofy-looking character. Mm-hmm. And the whole point of this guy is he's a goofy-looking character.
Yeah.
And he totally plays up to it because he knows he's goofy-looking. Not unlike Rowan Atkinson. When you know you're goofy-looking, play it up. Mm-hmm. So he plays it up, but he plays it up charming. You're actually a little bit charmed by Charlie. At least I was.
Well, he can sing, you know.
He can sing. He's got a great sense of humor, kind eyes, a sweet smile,
and a kilt.
He's got the whole package, and he's dangling it in front of that fire. No, anyway, no, he wasn't because he was wearing undies. Yeah, it was underwear. Anyway, so, let's see what else was going on. So, okay, they've got the sniper, right, and they're all set. You know, Steve gets the idea, okay, we're going to launch Diana up into the bell tower. And what happened to the bell tower?
She goes into it, and it just crumbles.
Boom! I busted a gut laughing at that. Not because it wasn't awesome, but because it was so absurdly awesome. Mm-hmm. It was just like, oh my god. You know, you were expecting like her to just go busting through the window and maybe blasting out the other side with the sniper, and the sniper falls off the roof or something.
Yeah. I was expecting her to like go in and then like his flailing body would go flying out. But nope. The tower just goes
I couldn't believe it. And from there it's pretty much let's find the big bad guy. Mm-hmm. It's kind of the Dirty Dozen. They've got to infiltrate this party at this posh palace there. And so we won't give away too many spoilers there. But big spoilers from here on out, okay, guys? So basically after that, you don't need to know too many details because from there it's pretty much at the climax where Diana is going after the bad guys. She thinks from the beginning that the war has been started by Ares. And we've been led on this sort of red herring with Lugendorf, General Lugendorf, and
I wasn't fooled.
You weren't fooled. I thought it was too obvious.
Yeah, I thought no.
It was too much of a red herring. I was like, it's gotta be someone else that we've seen. And who was the big name actor who just had this small part in this film? Lupin, David Thewlis.
Wondering where I'm like, I know that guy from somewhere. I've seen him in something big.
Yeah.
And I'm not good at like remembering actors from different contexts. I will recognize a person, but I will have trouble figuring out how I recognize them and that sort of thing.
Right. So in this one, it was I knew him because I've seen David Thewlis in plenty of stuff over the years. So David Thewlis plays this like sort of minister of state for the British Empire in World War I, and it turns out that he's Ares. And you think David Thewlis, that gangly guy with the big schnoz and the beady eyes, you know, Mr. Sweetheart from Harry Potter? No way. And given we've got some really evil people with the doctor character who's like got only part of her face.
I liked that character. I thought she was really interesting.
She was, because she had that history and you didn't know how her face got that way. Mm-hmm. And you could tell that there was something horrible under it. Mm-hmm. And it was made of porcelain like a china doll. And it had just these little cracks in it like she was a broken china doll. And she was very pretty. Mm-hmm. So I loved that. It was really wonderful because I think she was pretty well rounded as a character. She wasn't too two-dimensional.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting because you had like all these men fighting the war. So Wonder Woman's like once they get into the scenes with the war, it's like pretty much just males. But then you have this woman working for the bad guys, but you know she's not just kind of a token woman working for them. She has talent and power in that way.
Absolutely.
And they respect her and don't like treat her any different or treat her like a woman. And she's the one coming up with all these poisons.
Yeah, they call her Dr. Poison.
Yeah.
Which was cheesy, but it's like, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're just kind of accepting it, and that would be what they would kind of call her.
Mm-hmm.
You get to this really good climax where she finally kills Lugendorf, and she thinks, okay, this is great. Now, they put in this little plot device where he can inhale this gas that Dr. Poison made. And you think, well, maybe this is really going to kill him, or maybe this is going to make him unstoppable. And for a minute, it does.
Mm-hmm.
And you think, like, okay, he's going to come back to life, right? Because he inhaled that gas, because they show his skin glowing. And It's like, no, he's dead.
Yeah, I figured that gas was just supposed to give him, like, super strength temporarily, because he uses it a couple times, but, like, the effect wears off after a while.
Yeah, he's kind of like Our Man. Our Man, I think, does something like that. And he only has the effect for an hour. So, it turns out to be this Sir Patrick character is Ares. And first off, David Thewlis plays it flawlessly, in my opinion.
I thought he did a great job in that role.
Like, he does the different facets of it. He does the I'm actually your friend here and everything. Then they go for kind of the cliche of, if you and I join forces, Luke, we can end this conflict and bring a paradise to Earth. It's like... so they kind of go for the Empire Strikes Back thing, and Diana is like, I'll never join you. I choose love.
At that point, I'm kind of like, oh, really?
Well, one thing that kind of got me was that she keeps calling Steve stiff. Steve. And I kind of held back from mentioning that to you so I could get your original reaction, because not only does she keep calling him Steve, but then before he runs off to go die, he gives her his big fat clock.
Yeah, he does.
He does. He gives her his big fat clock. And it's a wristwatch, but it's a big fat clock.
It's above average.
It is above average. See, she's looking at his dick earlier in the film, and he says, I'm above average. It's like male ego. I'm above average, you know. Anyway, so, yeah, I just... I had to save that joke for now to get your reaction.
Thank you.
And anyway, but yeah, and I don't think that she called him that after until after they had sex too. So like after that, she called him Steve.
Wow. At least he could get it up.
You know, after the thrill of battle and watching her cause a bell tower to explode. And after sharing a couple sips of Belgian beer and a nice dance, hey. Because that's kind of when they go back and they make love, but they don't make a big deal out of it. And later scenes, there's no, like, entitlement to her body or her time. There's no, like, oh, darling, or anything. No, it's Diana and Steve. They're calling each other by their name.
I liked that.
It was a respectful relationship. It didn't change just because they had made love. So I like that it seemed a bit more organic to the characters.
Yeah.
So the final battle between, which is the real climax of the film, is like, it just becomes like this epic battle between gods. And, you know, you've been dealing with conventional battles up till now with like bombs and tanks and grenades and everything. And we get to see two gods square off, because it turns out that the god killer isn't this magical sword, but it's actually Diana herself. And what did you think of that little plot twist?
Okay, being the mythology nerd I am,
Go ahead.
I'm thinking, okay, she's named Diana, and but she's a deity in with this Greek pantheon. But then in the later Roman pantheon, Diana is basically the Roman version of Artemis. So I'm kind of like, well, this is kind of mixing things, and I don't know if Diana is more traditionally a Roman name, or if they had that in Greek beforehand. So, you know, my mythology nerd self is conflicted on that, but I like the idea that she was divine in a way, and I thought it was fun that she was kind of squaring off against her brother, and realized it later and said goodbye, brother, before
That was a really good line. I thought it was way more representative of the character. I like the fact that they made a point about how the Amazons were there to establish and keep peace and promote peace, because that was Wonder Woman's inception, was she was there to do things a different way from every other hero.
Yeah.
And so her move that they plant in the first act is when she puts those bracers together, and it sends out this wave of energy. And that's the move that she ends up using to stop Ares. A defensive move. But it ends up destroying him.
But also, he had kind of channeled their father's lightning and shot it towards her, and she kind of absorbed it in these bracers and sees, you know, like, well, he has that power, but I can use it too. And, you know, I can send it back to him the way our father did.
I like that. That's a good point. Yeah, it does dance around her bracers, and she's like holding on to it, and she's like, "Ja!" Oh, it was such a great moment.
Yeah.
And from there on, everything else in the film is just denouement. It's just kind of wrapping it up. And it's all flashback. The entirety of the story that you're getting is bookended by Diana living in modern Paris at the Louvre Museum, and she works in the antiquities department, and Bruce Wayne sends her a still image from this story where she's hanging out with Steve Trevor and all of these guys, and they had just saved this village, and they had a picture taken. So it just makes her think back to her earliest days and her adventures starting out in the world of mortal men. So it's not a bad bookending device.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good frame for everything, unlike this video, which has a terrible frame. Anyway, so all in all, I went in with an open mind because I've been disappointed by so many films. I was really disappointed by Man of Steel. I liked the entire Dark Knight trilogy that they did there with Christian Bale, and I loved the direction that they took that, and I said, now what if they were to take this same flair and do it with Wonder Woman? And what did they do? I think they took that same flair and did it with Wonder Woman. What do you think?
Possibly. I haven't seen, well, I don't know how many. The Dark Knight ones, I think. You know, when they when they do so many superhero movies, like, I never remember which one's which. If you say, this is the movie where so-and-so does this thing, or this villain dies in this way, I'm like, oh, okay, I know that. But,
okay, that was, the Dark Knight trilogy ones were Batman Begins, where Ra's al Ghul dies on the train. Yep. Then there was the Dark Knight, where Two-Face dies and the Joker is dangling from things.
I saw that one.
And then there's the Dark Knight Rises, which has Bane and Talia al Ghul, and they take over the city, and they're gonna destroy it with a bomb.
I don't know if I've seen that one.
That one's really long, so I don't blame you. That one's really hard to sit down and watch. All right, anyway, so all in all, let's just give this a little bit of a wrap-up. I am going to give Wonder Woman, a good 5 out of 5. And just that's my evaluation on it. I don't care what anyone else thinks. No, we did not go to a all-male showing of Wonder Woman. Because that's stupid. Anyway, what do you give it out of 5?
I would give it 5 out of 5 too. My biggest issue with it was too much of the male lead, and I didn't like the romance aspect. But in comparison to all the total badassness and how amazing I thought the beginning was, that just kind of takes a backseat to all the awesomeness in this movie.
It's true.
It was really well done.
A lot of the awesomeness overwhelms it, and the closing credits with that had this beautiful watercolor painting effect.
Oh, it was gorgeous.
I mean, if you don't pay attention to anything else in the movie, if you're just kind of looking up every now and again, stop and look at the closing credits with the beautiful artwork that they did. It could have been out of a James Bond movie, just with how beautifully they tend to do some of that sometimes. And, it was an important story that they had to kind of tell. I love the license that they're giving to Wonder Woman and to women characters and women filmmakers.
Oh, yeah.
This is not the thing that feminism hinges on, rather, in my opinion, but definitely a big, milestone reached.
And also, I liked how, it wasn't just the Amazons and Wonder Woman who were the strong women characters. I mean, you had Dr. Poison and Etta Candy, who, was kind of badass in her own way. And, so I enjoyed that aspect, too.
Yep. All right, so there you go. There you go, folks. 5 out of 5 from both of us. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Have fun.